The rope is already around my neck. Beneath my feet is a square metal trapdoor. Masked men stand before me. Someone is reading the sentence, even though everyone in the room knows how it ends. Just below the platform, a hand is raised holding a mobile phone. The screen is staring directly at me. For 24 years, I decided which images Iraq would see. Now my final frame belongs to a man with a mobile phone whose name I do not even know. I refuse the hood. If they want to see my fear, let them look me in the face. If they want submission, they have chosen the wrong man. Someone below shouts a name. The crowd comes alive. I shout back, and for a second, the execution of a former president turns into a tawdry shouting match. The executioner adjusts the knot. Only seconds remain before the trapdoor opens. But right now, I am not thinking about death. I am thinking about the recording. In a few hours, the whole world will see it, and I will no longer be around to explain exactly what people are supposed to see in it. 2 hours before this, I am still lying in my cell certain that I am capable of controlling at least my own finale. I am wrong. Approximately 2 hours before the execution, I am woken before dawn. No one bursts into the cell. No one raises their voice. The people who come to take you to your execution are, for some reason, exceptionally polite. Perhaps this is how civilization reassures itself. First, it prepares the rope. Then it delicately asks the condemned man to get dressed. From the footsteps in the corridor, I already knew why they had come. During my years in captivity, I learned to distinguish the gait of a guard, a doctor, and an officer. These footsteps have no continuation. They end at my door. I am told that today I will be handed over to the Iraqi authorities. Handed over. A fine word. That is how one hands over documents, keys, and suitcases. Once they used to hand me reports on divisions in oil fields. Now the item being handed over is me. I sit on the edge of the cot. White shirt, black trousers, dark coat. The Quran. Simple things suddenly become final. The last clothes you choose for yourself. The last button you fasten. The last time a person waits until you are ready. The button will not cooperate. Once, a single look from me was enough to make ministers change their decisions. Now, for a few seconds, I am at war with a small piece of plastic. And it resists with more organization than half of my cabinet. I do not hurry. A slow movement is also a form of command. As I dress at my own pace, it feels as though at least these few minutes belong to me. The main thing is not to show fear. I no longer have an army, a party, palaces, or portraits in the squares. But my face remains. The last territory of the regime, measuring a few square centimeters. Let them see composure. Let them argue later about who I was. A president, a dictator, a criminal, a defender of the country, or a man judged by the victors. The main thing is that they argue. Oblivion is more terrifying than a sentence. The American guards are waiting by the door. They held me prisoner, yet they brought medicine, monitored my blood pressure, and called for doctors. They preserved my life with astonishing precision, only so that it would end at the appointed time. I say a brief goodbye. No one names the exact minute of the execution. There is no longer any need. From the clothes people are wearing, the closed doors, and the 2 quick glances, it is clear. The decision is made. There is no one left to argue with. I want to ask how much time is left. I do not ask. Saddam Hussein, even a former one, should not inquire about the schedule of his own death as if he were late for a train. Instead, I commit the cell to memory. The cot, the table, the light above the door. A man usually considers his palace, his family, or his native land as his final things. But the last home sometimes turns out to be a room that he hated, yet still managed to learn down to every single scratch. For them, this morning will become a story to be told over dinner. I guarded Saddam Hussein. Everyone has a desire to touch history one day, preferably from the side of the bars where the key is kept. They bind my hands. The dry click of the latch sounds louder than it should. With these hands, I signed laws, appointments, military orders, and death warrants. Now they are folded behind my back, because I have nothing left to do with them. That is when power ends. Not at the fall of the capital, and not at the toppling of a statue. It ends when you cannot adjust your own sleeve without the permission of an American guard. The door opens. In the corridor, there is white light, metal, and the smell of cleaning fluid. I walk forward and hear my own footsteps. People arrested by my services once walked through corridors just like these. My mind immediately corrects the phrasing. They were detained on suspicion of crimes against the state. Their cases were reviewed by the competent authorities. Sentences were carried out in accordance with the law. The state loves the passive voice. In it, no one actually does anything. People are not taken, they find themselves detained. They are not killed. The sentence is carried out. Even conscience there resembles a government office that is temporarily closed to visitors. I think of Du Jail, of the assassination attempt on my motorcade, of the 148 convicted men and boys. The trial was the revenge of the victors. I continue to believe this. Judges were changed, politicians rushed the process, lawyers were murdered. But one thought still tries to follow. Even an unfair trial does not make Du Jail a fiction. I do not let the thought finish. Ahead is the door to the outside. Beyond it, the helicopter waits. In an hour, they will offer to cover my face with a black hood. I will refuse. But first I will see Baghdad from above and realize that a country can be lost twice. Approximately 1 hour and 20 minutes until the execution. The rotor blades slice through the night air. The soldiers move quickly, as if this were a routine prisoner transport. For them, it is an operation. For me, it is the last transport of my life. No red carpet, no guard of honor, no armored limousine. History has sent a military helicopter and failed to offer a window seat. We rise above Baghdad. The engine drowns out any attempt at conversation. The metal floor vibrates beneath my feet. A strap presses against my shoulder. The air inside smells of fuel and the cold fabric of uniforms. I look at the soldiers opposite me. Some are young enough not to remember Iraq before the war. To them, my rule is just stories from their parents, newsreel footage, and a man with a beard who was pulled out of a hole. I want them to look away. They do not. The flight is short, but when you have not a single day left, 10 minutes turn into a country of their own. They hold a childhood near Tikrit, the revolution, palaces, wars, and a few decisions which once seemed inevitable. Below is the dark city. I cannot distinguish the streets, but I know where the Tigris flows, where the bridges stand, and the buildings upon which my face hung for decades. Power forces a ruler to multiply himself into thousands of portraits, as if without a constant reminder, the people might forget whom they are obligated to love. I remember the statue in Firdos Square. The cable tightened, the metal tilted, and the bronze copy collapsed. The people struck it with their shoes. I told myself the Americans had gathered the crowd, that the real Iraq remained silent, that the people would eventually understand whom they had lost. Perhaps some have understood. But now I am flying over the capital in handcuffs, and that realization offers little comfort. Power is like a theatrical stage set. As long as the spotlights are on, the palace looks like a fortress. Then morning comes, and you discover the back wall is made of plywood. I clutch the Quran. My fingers do not tremble. This is what the state's agenda narrows down to in the final hour. Do not beg, do not cry, do not give the enemies a beautiful shot. Inside me, the press service continues to work. The president remains calm. The president does not recognize the legality of the proceedings. The president is ready to meet his fate with courage. Not a word about the fact that the president is bound and flying to his execution. One must not let the facts spoil a well-crafted statement. I think about the war with Iran, about Kuwait, about the sanctions, about the invasion. Every catastrophe was given a dignified name. A retreat became a regrouping. Isolation became independence. Defeat became a conspiracy. A ruler is not always able to change reality, but he can rename it and hope that no one notices the smoke. My sons appear before my eyes. Uday, Kusei, not the final photographs, their living faces. They were born inside power and therefore mistook it for a natural phenomenon. I taught them that the fear of those around them meant respect. I immediately argue with myself. They were defending the country. They were killed by enemies. Now is not the time to listen to accusations that no one is left to prove. I close that door. The helicopter begins its descent. In a few minutes, the Americans will hand me over to the Iraqis. It should have been a return to my own people. But I will be met by masked men. One of them will ask if I repent. Another will bring a phone that will change the meaning of the entire execution. Until the execution, approximately 50 minutes after landing, everything happens quickly. The American guard stays behind. Ahead are Iraqi officials, guards, a judge, and the executioners. Some hide their faces. A mask gives a person a strange kind of freedom. When the face is hidden, the voice grows louder and the responsibility feels lighter. Documents are checked, signatures, stamps, confirmation of identity. I hold the Quran and ask for it to be given to a person I name. Even now, I am forced to entrust my final request to people I do not recognize as a legitimate authority. One official nods. Another looks at his watch. I feel like demanding confirmation, a receipt, the name of the person in charge. An old habit. Every action must have someone responsible for it. But here I am no longer the chairman of the meeting. My demand would sound like a plea, and I will not grant them the gift of a plea. Everything must be legal, at least on paper. Paper is a remarkable material. Constitutions, menus, and death warrants are all printed on it with equal ease. They ask me if I am afraid. No. Whether I repent. No. The answers come quickly, perhaps too quickly. I tell them I have lived my life as a fighter, that I defended Iraq from Persians, Americans, and traitors, that a man who has chosen this path does not fear death. The phrase sounds good, almost like a line prepared in advance for a textbook. A politician edits his own legend until the very end. Even before the execution, a little clerk sits inside him and whispers, "Repeat it with more confidence. The first version wasn't historical enough." One of the guards accuses me. "You destroyed the country." I reply that I was saving it. He speaks of poverty and the dead. I remind him of the enemies. For a few seconds, the execution of a former president turns into a backyard argument. This is how greatness ends. Not with a final speech before eternity, but with a spat with a man whose name you do not know. But I cannot yield. If I admit to even one accusation, they will take more than just my life. They will take my version of life. I repeat, Iraq needed a strong ruler. The country could have fallen apart. Conspiracies existed. The enemies were truly close by. This is the truth. But power has a convenient trick. A real threat can be magnified to such a size that any crime beside it looks like a mere precaution. I do not call it a crime. They give me time for prayer. I hold the Quran while the people around me hurry to finish the procedure before dawn and the holiday. Death is built into the schedule. A man dreams of entering eternity while officials look at their watches. They bind me again. Someone else's fingers adjust my clothes. Every touch is a reminder. My body has almost ceased to belong to me. I am led down the corridor of the old military intelligence building. Gray walls, dim light, metal doors. This place has seen people brought here during my regime. I do not know their names. A ruler rarely knows the names of those whose lives are broken by his system. For that, there are case numbers, lists, and subordinates. A face creates accountability. A number creates reporting. 148 people from due jail. I tell myself again, an assassination attempt was made on the head of state. The state was obligated to respond. But the phrase no longer sounds like an answer. It sounds like an order I continue to give myself. Ahead is a metal staircase. The trapdoor waits at the top. In a few minutes, they will offer me the hood. I will refuse and decide that I have maintained my dignity. Then I will notice the phone. And I will realize that the final frame does not belong to me. About 20 minutes until the execution. The stairs echo beneath my feet. Executioners in black masks walk beside me. My hands are tied behind my back, my legs bound so that I move in short steps. Once, people waited for me to enter the hall. Now they wait for me to reach the trapdoor. One man. A slightly different protocol. At the top there is a red metal railing, a thick rope, and a square door in the floor. I have seen parades, congresses, and ceremonies staged for my sake. Thousands of soldiers moving in sync. Orchestras played marches. This final scene is significantly more modest. Gray walls, cheap lighting, a few masks. Death rarely invests in the interior. The executioner shows me the black hood. For a second, everyone waits for my decision. It is almost funny. They no longer ask me questions of state, yet the choice between a piece of cloth and my own face is still considered mine. I shake my head. No, I do not want darkness before my time. I do not want the final image of Saddam Hussein to be a sack over his head. I spent my whole life forcing people to look at my face. To leave in hiding would be a defeat. The hood is convenient for more than just the condemned. It is convenient for those who kill. A face interferes with the procedure. A face has eyes, age, and expression. A sack turns a person into a technical task. Let them work with a face. They wrap a cloth around my neck and prepare the noose. I look at the witnesses. Some avoid my gaze. Others stare too intently. Perhaps they lost fathers, brothers, or sons under my regime. To them, I am not a former president. I am the reason for an empty chair at the family table. But they are no court to me either. I will not give them repentance. And then I notice a raised hand with a phone. The screen is pointed at the platform. The official camera records the procedure, but this phone captures everything. The shouts, the insults, my responses, the sound of the mechanism. I do not know who holds it or where the recording will end up. But I understand the main point. The final edit no longer obeys anyone. This is a new humiliation. Not death, but the loss of the right to decide exactly how that death should appear to those who will watch it later. Not to me. Not to the government. Not to the executioners. A man can spend billions on propaganda and still lose to an operator with a mobile phone. The noose settles on my neck. For now, it is just weight. Coarse fiber, a knot, the executioner's hand. This object knows more about me than all my biographers. It knows the exact length of the time remaining. Below, they begin to make noise. Now the name of a man I considered an unworthy rival will be heard. And for a few seconds, I will try once more to turn defeat into victory. Approximately 5 minutes before the execution. Someone reads the sentence. The name. The case. Death by hanging. The words pass me by. I listen to something else. The creak of the rope, the breathing of the masked men, the rustle of clothes, the quiet click of the phone. I think of the documents I signed in my office. A sheet would be brought to my desk. A brief summary, a signature, the next case. Between the ink and a person's death, there were corridors, cars, cells, guards, and executioners. I saw the start of the process. Sometimes I saw the result. But I almost never walked the path between them. Now I am walking it in full. A very instructive state procedure. A pity there is no return ticket provided. From the crowd, religious shouts are heard first. Then someone brings up the opponents of my regime. The voices talk over one another, and the official procedure begins to look like a hurried lynching. I look at the judge. He is supposed to maintain order. On this platform, order is the last piece of scenery separating the execution of a sentence from revenge. Then from the crowd they shout, "Muqtada! Muqtada! Muqtada!" I look down. Muqtada? There is mockery in my voice. If I am to be defeated by an enemy, let it be a superpower, history, an entire era, anyone. But not a man whom I considered too small for my own legend. Someone wishes me hell. Another recalls the people who died under my regime. I answer back. The words barely matter. What matters is not remaining silent. Silence in the presence of enemies feels like a confession. The prosecutor demands they stop. This man is facing execution. The room falls quiet for a second, and I, Saddam Hussein, immediately turn this into a victory. This is my greatest talent, to lose a war and call it steadfastness, to lose a country and call it resistance, to stand with a noose around my neck and find a way to declare a moral triumph. I begin to recite the Shahada. My voice is steady. There is no God but God, and Muhammad is his messenger. I finish the first phrase. I start again. Time slows down. My entire life does not flash before my eyes. Only isolated images. A boy near Tikrit who wanted to become so strong that no one could ever humiliate him again. A president at a massive desk. Ministers who were afraid to deliver bad news. Sons who mistook fear for love. The number 148, behind which I never wanted to see the faces. I command myself once more. It was a necessity. There was an attempt on my life. The state had to respond. Weakness would have destroyed Iraq. The phrases line up like soldiers on parade, but the grandstand is empty. For a second, another thought emerges. I do not let it finish. The final seconds. I continue the prayer. The witness with a phone is filming. Some will see a criminal receiving his punishment. Others, a deposed president who maintained his dignity. Some will see justice. Some, revenge. Everyone will watch the same recording and see their own story, and I will no longer be able to correct them. I won't be able to go on television. I won't be able to declare someone else's version a lie. I won't be able to replace a bad take. I wanted to remain in history as the man who never backed down, but history is not obligated to remember people the way they advertise themselves. My final fear is not that life is ending. It is that the right to explain that life ends along with it. I say, Muhammad. I hear the mechanism move. The executioner triggers it. The trapdoor opens. The phrase remains unfinished. The end. After my death, people will argue about whether I was afraid. Some will call the execution justice, while others will call it revenge following an unfair trial. But these final 2 hours speak of more than just me. Power promises a man immortality during his lifetime. It prints his face on currency, raises statues, and forces millions to repeat his name. Gradually, the man mistakes the echo for love, the silence for consent, and the fear for respect. Bad news stops reaching the office. Objections vanish. Every decision seems wise because no one dares to call it a mistake. And then comes a morning when the ruler is woken before dawn, told to dress, his papers are checked, and he is handed over from one set of hands to another. All of his immortality fits into a grainy video from a mobile phone. I refused the hood because I thought it would keep me in control of the final frame. But the phone belonged to someone else. History belongs to those who outlive me. And the last word belongs to a mechanism that triggered before I could finish my sentence. What do you think? Does power change a person, or does it simply allow them to stop pretending?